Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Adam Dorsey, a psychologist in Silicon Valley and the host of Super Psyched, a podcast dedicated to supercharging your life. Each episode contains fun, high-quality interviews with experts looking at psychology from all angles. Super Psyched is your tool to get more of what you want in your life and less of what you don't. Many of us fantasize about what it would be like to be an actor. And what many of us don't know is just how long the long game is in pursuing that dream. And we have ideas about what that life might be like. But how accurate are those ideas? What does it actually take to succeed in the business? And what does it take to play vastly different characters, tap into our brains and hearts to stretch into the realities of the people we are portraying? And what about social comparison and FOMO? It's a heavy component of life in the world of acting because all the players have such different realities. I mean, can you imagine working with Leo Di Caprio or Brad Pitt and asking yourself, how do I measure up? I have the perfect person to answer these and other questions, and all I can say is prepare to be fascinated. Spencer Garrett is a veteran movie actor, and he was recently inducted into the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. That means he gets to vote during the Oscars in a real way. He has played in TV shows as diverse as Dallas, Murder, She Wrote, and The X-Files, all the way up to movies like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and alongside Harrison Ford in Air Force One. I mean, check out Spencer's IMDB. He has done everything with seemingly everyone, and he's always been working. I'm pretty sure if you check him out, you'll recognize you've seen him in lots of great stuff. Spencer and I met years ago in the California AIDS ride, a 7-day, 575-mile ride from San Francisco to Los Angeles, and I've always wanted to have him on the podcast. Since meeting him, watching movies has been like a long-time game of Where's Waldo? It seems like I see him everywhere, and he's always excellent, no matter which of the diverse 224 characters he's playing, he fully embodies that role. At least as impressive, he's an incredibly kind person with a superb work ethic, and I'm grateful for his willingness to share his world with us at a very candid and deep level. So listen in as Spencer and I get into the skills required to take on 224 different roles. Spencer Garrett, a hearty welcome to Super Psyched.
What's happening? Good to see you, my old friend.
I am so glad to see you. For the listeners, I met Spencer in the real world on the AIDS ride back in 1999. It was a bromance immediately. I mean, just our love of cinema, our love of humor. And then after the AIDS ride, I saw you everywhere. You became kind of the Where's Waldo in my life. Every time I'd watch a movie, there's Spencer again playing something different and dramatically different. It could be something like Sean Hannity, and all of a sudden you're Chick Hearn, and all of a sudden you're Willy from West Hollywood, the German guy who...
Bavarian. Adam.
He was Bavarian.
I'm a Bavarian man who was transported from Bavaria to West Hollywood. It's a very specific character, but let's be clear.
And actually, you and I both got sacked because we were talking too long and we were goofing around so much at the rest stop that we ended up getting bussed in to camp because...
That's right.
Do you remember we got busted? So that was pretty funny. But lest that happen again, I'm going to get right into my questions. So I'm wondering if you could share with my listeners a bit about your origin story, you know, as a newbie actor working with some big names in Hollywood, how you came to be into the profession, the son and grandson of people who were there before you, but as reflected, if what the listener cannot see is that you truly love cinema. I mean, it is in all of the artwork around you. This is not just a job, but how did you get into it?
Well, not just cinema. We can use the word cinema for our more pretentious listeners out there. Just flicks, movies. I do love cinema, but I mean, talking about television and theater and anything arts related. I grew up really blessed to have grown up in a household with an actress mom who took me to Broadway and off-Broadway and ballet and opera and all of that when I was a little kid. I mean, one of my earliest memories is going to see a production of Peter Hall's Midsummer Night's Dream in New York when I was about 7 years old. And it was a very interactive production of Midsummer Night's Dream where the actors were all around you and you went from room to room and you were part of the production. And I remember back then thinking, I mean, I'd already grown up on sets and on sound stages and backstage where my mom was doing a play or a movie or something. But I remember when she would take me to see these plays, I just remember just being so immersed in it and thinking, wow, what a cool life. It was all around me growing up as a kid. My grandparents were actors. My grandma and grandpa ran a theater on what used to be called a showboat. It was the Goldenrod Showboat, and it was docked on the Mississippi River in St. Louis. And there was a theater on the showboat. And my grandparents ran the theater, and people from St. Louis would get on the boat and they would put on a show. And then sometimes the boat would go up and down the Mississippi River and stop in little towns along the way. So I grew up backstage in the wings, watching my mom do the unsinkable Molly Brown from off stage. At one point, I guess legend has it, I was about 4 or 5 and in the middle of a big chorus number during Unsinkable Molly Brown at some open air theater outside of Atlanta. I was off stage watching. And at one point I wandered out onto the stage and tried to get involved, just started dancing with the chorus in the middle of the number while the show was going on. And apparently I pointed up and I said, "That's my mommy." And my mom put me on her shoulders and danced me off the stage and then plopped me back on the lighting board off stage. So I was always trying to get in on the act.
You're still dancing with her. I saw the video of you dancing with her at the Oscars. I mean,
yes.
Here she is, 89 years old, and there you are, a newly inducted member of the Academy. And
Academy, I got in about 5 or 6 years ago. Yeah, that was a lifelong dream. But yeah, that was fun. Took mom to the Oscars a few weeks ago, and we danced together, and she looked very regal. And I'm very proud of her, and she's very proud of me. So it's nice. She's been a great mentor and a great teacher to me, and she loves watching the stuff that I do. I did a play last summer in Sag Harbor out in the Hamptons in New York. And she flew back for opening night and, of course, gave me notes after opening night. So that's how I kind of got started. I grew up and around it and grew up loving theater and loving movies. And a lot of times she would be away working and I would come home from school and I would flip on the TV and there would be Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid or some wonderful old movie. And I would sit there in the afternoon and I would watch. It was called The $1 Million Movie. And it was on in the afternoons and I would watch movies on television. All the other kids were out playing sports. I was home digesting films, pretty much.
Geeking out from a young age. And I'm wondering,
geeking out from a young age.
When you were seeing those, did you have a vision or a fantasy of who you'd become in the movie world, in the flicks world?
I remember going to see The Sting, which is a movie that I've seen maybe 83 times.
For sure.
I think it came out in 75. So I was about 9 or 10. And I remember going to see it and just falling in love with, I mean, it took place in the 1930s, Depression era, Chicago, 1930s, but the fedora hats and the clothes, the whole vibe and the way Newman and Redford interacted with each other. And I remember turning to my mom and saying, "I know what I want to be when I grow up." And she said, "You want to be an actor, right?" I said, "Well, yeah, but I also want to be a grifter." "You don't want to be a grifter." And I was like, and I remember asking for a fedora for Christmas. And that started my fascination. Here, I'll show you. Your listeners can't hear it. I will pan up.
I see your hats. It's a large hat collection, man.
Well, that's a small version. I've got a lot of hats. And that was my nickname in junior high school and high school. They called me Hats.
And lo and behold, that's what you've ended up doing 224 times. You've worn different hats to become
different hats. Yeah. Mom gave me a fedora for Christmas because I wanted to look like Paul Newman. And they had this little symbol that they did, this little sign that they gave each other, rubbing their index finger across their nose in that movie. And I did that for years. I wanted to live in the world of movies.
And did you want to be the leading guy or did you want to be the character actor you've become? What was the original vision? Because
I just wanted to be a part of it. I don't think I knew what a leading man or a character man was. I knew that the actors that I became drawn to as a film goer and a lover of film were the Gene Hackmans and the Robert Duvalls and the Dustin Hoffmans, Pacino. This is the 70s, and it was the emergence of the character actor or the not traditional leading man. you had your Clark Gable and your Gary Cooper and those guys. But then all of a sudden in the 70s, which is the golden age of cinema, as far as I'm concerned, you had these guys like Duvall and Hackman emerge as these character guys that emerged as leading men. If you look at Hackman's career, you look at Dustin's career, Duvall is working into his early 90s. These are the guys that have had these long careers. I was more fascinated by those actors than I love my Robert Redford and Paul Newman. Paul Newman was a movie star to me that became a wonderful character actor as he got older. That to me, like a Paul Newman career, that would have been something to emulate and something to follow. And also just the example of the life he lived as well. So I was just aware of all these guys and actresses as well, like Geraldine Page and Maureen Stapleton. And then later on, Meryl Streep, obviously, and Glenn Close, who I got to work with on Air Force One. I look around this wall of memorabilia and stuff, and I still think about how lucky I am every day. I get to play dress up for a living and be somebody else for a few weeks. I don't take any of it for granted at all.
I mean, that's so beautiful. And I feel the same way about being a psychologist. You and I are both geeks in our profession, which I think is really the highest honor that we can confer upon ourselves if we truly love what we do and it's embedded in our personality and who we are. I also find myself wondering, though, Charles Dickens is said to have created more characters than anyone. And I'm not
Probably
sure if that's
true.
entirely, maybe true. And similarly, you've had to go 224 times and ask yourself, who is this person going to be when I bring him to life for this movie? And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about your method. How do you tap in to the soul of each character and bring him forth? As I was mentioning, very few of us have the ability to even go 2 or 3 characters, but you've done 224 in everything from like Dallas to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So, I mean, like, how have you done that?
It's really different for every job, from job to job. With the case of television, which is really where I've made most of my bones for the last 40 years, mostly doing television. I mean, I'm lucky to have done a bunch of really terrific movies, but doing guest spots, episodic television, series television. But when you get a call on Tuesday from your agent saying they want you to play Senator Joseph McCarthy and it starts shooting in Vancouver in 2 days, you don't have a lot of time to delve into. So I got the call and my first reaction was, Joe McCarthy, he was like fat and bald and nothing like Joe McCarthy. And then, of course, my second reaction was, how delicious. That somebody thought of me, that the casting person or the producer, whoever thought of me, that thought that I had the chops to pull that kind of a character off. And then, of course, I'm thinking, all right, I've got 72 hours to do. Thank God for the internet. Before the internet, you got cast in something and you would go to the library and crack open a few books and pop in some VHS tapes. I mean, it was before TiVo and all that. So it was a different time. Now I get cast as Joe McCarthy and I go on YouTube and I'm watching Joe McCarthy speeches and trying to get the speech pattern and the mannerisms and the vocal, all of that. So there's different ways of preparing, but sometimes you don't always have the luxury. That was my long roundabout answer of saying sometimes you don't always have the luxury of preparing as well as you'd like to. In the case of playing Joe McCarthy, I had 2 days. In the case of playing Bob Woodward in The Front Runner, I had about 2 months. I had an opportunity to meet him, which was rare. Sometimes I've gotten to meet the people that I've played. I got to meet Sean Hannity. I played Tom DeLay in a movie called Casino Jack. And you want to get as much of their vibe as you can so you can bring it to the screen. I think I played something like 13 real life people. Isn't that amazing? Like I've gotten cast as 13 actual real life characters, which is really kind of unusual. So preparing for, you say 224 of these different characters. I mean, preparing for each one, everyone has its process. But certainly with episodic television, you just don't have the luxury. There's no rehearsal time. You get cast. 2 days later, you had a wardrobe fitting. And then maybe the next day you're on set and you're jumping right in. So you just got to just go and come up with the best thing you can come up with. I'm very good at breaking down a script. I love getting out the pen as soon as I get the script. And I just kind of how would this guy sound? And how would he walk? And how would he talk? And what might he do here? And what inflection on this line would I put on this? See, things like that, you're able to bring to the party. But we don't always have the luxury. Even in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which was a lot of fun, that was literally an hour of filming, that one scene. From the audition process to 6 months later, when I was actually on the set, I literally auditioned and a bunch of time flew by. And then all of a sudden, I got a call that I'd gotten the gig and you're working 3 days from now. That's how things work sometimes. And so I walked onto the set and I had a feeling in my head that I was going to get the job. So I was all during those 6 months, I was thinking, all right, I've got the voice. I've got this guy down in my body. And so by the time I sat in that chair, I was ready to let him out.
It was just the genie in the lamp. You just let him out.
Just a genie in a lamp. Sometimes that's the way it is. Sometimes these characters just come out of you organically.
And sometimes I'm guessing you're playing a character who maybe in real life you wouldn't like, and yet you have to find him within yourself. And that is amazing to me.
Getting into the skin of Sean Hannity is not a skin that I would like to ever have to inhabit again. But you can't judge the characters that you're playing. I mean, I find him to be a rather loathsome, divisive human being, but I couldn't bring that onto the soundstage with me. I had to play him as him. I had to do the best kind of impersonation of him as I could. So in some cases, you can add your own interpretation, but in some cases, you're kind of doing an impression, an impersonation, and you can kind of add your own little spice to it. But it's all whatever you could pull out of your toolbox and bring to the party. And that's what I love about being an actor, is being able to bring these guys to life.
And not only are you good at doing the acting part, you're also good with the whole relationships thing. And I can only say that with conviction because I infer that being hired 224 times means that you have a good reputation as showing up as a true professional, and that people hire and want to rehire you. It's one thing to get the job once. It's another thing to get repeats. And I'm guessing that there are certain best practices that are just in your bones, whether it's showing up on time, being easy to work with. What are the things that you do to increase the likelihood of being hired and rehired?
It sounds kind of silly, Adam, but I think just trying to be a good person. Look, you got to be a professional. It's a profession. I'm working on a Shonda Rhimes series right now, and there's a cast of 33 regulars on the show. And Shonda runs a really tight ship, and she gave a speech on day one at the table read. The gist of her speech was, if one person is late, it's a domino effect. If an actor is late or a crew member is late, it's a domino effect, and it affects everybody. So that's sort of an ethos that I've tried to bring to the set or the theater for as long as I can remember. Sometimes you're not always successful at it, but I like to get there early. I like to get set up in my trailer. I like to breathe and have my coffee and get settled in and show up on time and know your lines and be nice to the crew and know the names of the crew members and be kind. And we like to think that kind of pays off in dividends down the line. I'd like to think that a lot of the repeat business that I've gotten from various directors and shows and producers and things over the years is because I showed up and I did my job. And if it's a nice supporting role, they're bringing you in off the bench to hit a double. That's kind of how I see myself. I'm not a star. I've never been a star, but I'm a good supporting player and I'm great off the bench. And if you put me in and get me some swings, I'll get on base for you and I'll make the scene a little bit better with what I bring to the table. The choices that I make, and I like to think that what I bring as an actor is a little bit of extra zhuzh that somebody else isn't going to bring. And that's why I get hired. So at least I hope so. I hope it's not too egoistic of me to say that, but I like to think that a lot of it is just like being a good guy and treating people nicely. And hopefully that pays off. It's a pay it forward kind of thing.
So I've got a lot to say about that, and please apologize in advance. But first off, Bill Lawrence, the great creator of Scrubs, one of my all-time favorite shows, as well as Ted Lasso and Shrinking, of course.
Shrinking, I love.
Yeah. Phenomenal. He had a no dicks policy, and there's often a chasm between what we know and what we do. And if you can lean into what you know, of course, showing up on time and doing your best work is something we all know to do, and yet something that very many of us really don't execute on if we really are honest with ourselves. And you've really been honest with yourselves, perhaps brutally honest without being brutal. You know, there's an old Zen tale that basically describes these two masters at an argument, and one of them lays out a 5-day plan. The other one says, just be a good person. And he says, wow, I gave you 5 days and you just said be a good person. And the Zen master who said, be a good person, basically said, yes, it took you 5 days, and yet you can't seem to execute on what every school child knows. And so you're doing these things that are ostensibly obvious, or maybe even blasé, just be a good person. But that's actually very hard to do, and you're very good at it. And one last thought before I get into my next question, and that is, I often think about the great Tony Gwynn, may his memory be a blessing. He was a great singles and doubles hitter. He always wanted to be a home run hitter. And I imagine that there was a part of you that wanted to be Paul Newman and had to reconcile, wait, I'm a singles and doubles hitter. So not everybody has to be LeBron, and only one person really can. Which brings me to my next question. You sometimes work, I'm guessing, with some difficult personalities, and yet the project must be excellent. How do you override perhaps your momentary dislike or disgust even for somebody you're working with in order to access the best chemical combo to create a good outcome?
You know what? Movie sets can be like crazy dysfunctional families sometimes. Even coming in as a guest star on an episode of blah, blah, where you don't know all the personalities, you don't know the other actors on the show, and you're coming in as this guy they just kind of brought in to play the lawyer or the judge or whatever that I've done 300 times. And it's happened to be countless times where you walk into a set where there's this sort of already a built-in dysfunction that's going on that you're not aware of. And I'm a pretty good energy reader. Like, I can walk into a room and I can feel if there's bad vibes going on. You just have to be the person that does not contribute to any of that. I've worked with some difficult personalities. The last couple of shows I worked on, there were a couple of people that were kind of tough to deal with. One of them got fired off the last show that I was on. A young actor who thought that he was a lot more important than he was. Literally a young actor who had not done much at all. And he came in really full of beans, and he really thought that he was the shit. And he treated everybody terribly. And it was just completely unfounded. It was based in nothing. He just felt like his character should have more to say and do in the course of the series. And he was constantly voicing his discontent. And finally, the producers said, you know what? You're replaceable. We're going to replace you tomorrow with somebody that looks a lot like you. How does that sound? And that's how that went down. His energy, his bad energy permeated the set for a good couple of weeks before the producers finally said, yeah, life's too short. I try not to get involved in the drama. As Chick Hearn, if you've seen the show,
it's so good.
Got reams and reams and reams of dialogue to learn. So I got too much on my plate to worry about, somebody doesn't like the size of their trailer, or they don't have enough lines and they're going to bitch and moan and let everybody know it. I'd like to show up and just do my job.
So what I'm hearing is that there's a mantra that's going through your head on repeat, and that is focus on the work.
Focus on the work. Focus on the work. You're there to do a job, like a plumber. I'm a tradesman. I'm a craftsman. You're paid to come in and provide a service. You're there to serve the script. You're there to serve the story. You're there to serve your other actors. It's a collaborative medium. And if you come in with bad energy, it's a domino effect and everybody feels it. So come in and serve the purpose for which you were hired to do. And that is act well the part and say the lines trippingly on the tongue, as Billy Shakespeare put it. Or as Spencer Tracy said, remember your lines and don't bump into the furniture. It's not that hard. I mean, there are aspects of it that are hard, but it's really not that hard what we do. It's not rocket science.
Well, to you, it's not that hard. I'm telling you, to the muggles like me, it's unimaginable to be able to stretch into the character the way you have and to make me believe that you are that person. So I'm going to give you a little pushback on the it's not that hard notion.
That's the discipline. That's the fun
I see.
part. But to me, that's the fun part of what I get to do. When I was preparing to play Chick Hearn, I spent hours and hours watching Chick Hearn broadcast games on YouTube, to the point where I could screen mirror the game onto my television set, turn the volume down, and I'd be sitting on my couch alone in my apartment with the sound down, and I'm like calling the basketball games as Chick Hearn. You got to do your homework.
So what are some things that people like me outside the industry might think goes on in the life of someone who's an actor, and we'd be spectacularly wrong? What are some common myths, legends that you might disabuse people of about life as an actor?
Oh, gosh. That we all live in Beverly Hills and we all drive Mercedes to the marina and get on our yachts. There definitely is a perception that actors are all sort of wealthy. I mean, it's a grind, man. There's Tom Cruise and Tom Hanks, and there's sort of this top 1%, this creme de la creme of people. But for the rest of us, it's dog eat dog. There's now, I don't know if you're aware, but there's no more auditioning in person anymore because of the pandemic. So actors are now asked to put themselves on tape. So if my agent, for example, says, oh, they're casting this role of Bob in this movie and it shoots in Boston in next month, and they'll send you a breakdown of what Bob is all about. And then you have to put yourself on tape and send the tape in. Whereas 3 years ago, you would walk into a room of 10 people. There would be a director and a producer and a casting director. And you'd walk into the room and you do the scene for the people in person. Now you're doing it with your iPhone, with your buddy in your living room. And there's no energy. There's no give and take. There's no
black
feedback.
hole.
There's a black hole. It's a completely different world. And I went through a period, I'm lucky enough now at this point, I'm happy, with knock wood, where I'd say a good percentage of the stuff that I get is offered to me, which is a place that is sort of earned after doing this for 40 years. But I still audition a lot for stuff that I really want to get. And sometimes you go 0 for 20 with the self-taping. We're all out there grinding and struggling away because me and 15 other guys that I used to see in the waiting room to read for that guest spot on ER, now we're in our houses and we're putting ourselves on tape for that one role. So there's still a ton of competition out there. We're all competing against each other for the same parts. So the Beverly Hills and the yachts and all that, I mean, that was being facetious. But I mean, I think there's this perception that actors have it easy. I waited tables in New York and LA for a good 7-8 years before I started to kind of take hold as an actor and started to get roles and started to feel like it was a good 10 years of waiting tables and catering and tending bar before I got to the point where I thought, oh, I can literally say I can support myself as an actor now. I don't have to have a side job or wait tables. But that's pretty commonplace.
And it's a long game. From your alma mater, I just recently interviewed Dory Clark. She teaches at Duke, just where you went. And she talks about the fact that getting into the game and it's being willing to tolerate lots and lots of at-bats is a big part. And you're confirming that. And I'm wondering, one of the things that shows up in my office more than almost anything is themes and variations on FOMO and social comparison. And I think that as a character actor, you would experience that more than anybody. Here you are interviewing Leo and Brad Pitt in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and they are household names. And I wonder, and you hang out with people like Jason Alexander, Lawrence Fishburne at the table and hang out, do podcasts with them and just shoot the shit. I mean, we all engage in social comparison.
Here's my answer to that. When I sat down, I'm glad you brought that up. And it's funny because as I'm talking to you, I'm looking at, I've got a lovely framed photograph of me and Brad and Leo from that scene, which I love. And I love that movie.
It's a gorgeous scene.
I love that movie for a lot of reasons because it's about television and actors in the 1960s. And it's during the era that my mom came up in. So a lot of those references and a lot of the Easter eggs that you see in that movie are things that I totally got. Like when I watched that movie with my mom, by the way, at the premiere, it celebrates actors. It's a love letter to actors. And it's a love letter to Hollywood in the 1960s and 1970s. And that's why I was so thrilled to be a part of it. But when I walked onto that set and I sat down opposite Brad and Leo, both of whom I know a little bit over the years, and Brad said, I know I've seen you in a million things. He said, have we ever worked? Is this the first time we worked together? And I said, well, you probably don't remember this, but you and I were on Dallas together.
Oh,
now for the kids out there, Dallas was a long-running nighttime soap opera in the 1980s, a huge hit. It was on for 7-8 years. Dallas and Dynasty and Falcon Crest shows like this. They were big, glossy nighttime soap operas.
And Murder, She Wrote, which you were also on. You were on that too.
I got 2 Murder, She Wrotes under my belt. I think I might be one of a handful of people that did more than one Murder, She Wrote as 2 totally different characters. It's a point of pride with me. I love Angela Lansbury. Her character was Jessica. She was famous for treating actors and paying them better than any other show in Hollywood at the time. She loved actors. She treated actors just beautifully. I'm sorry for the segue. I turned to Brad and I said, you probably don't remember this. We were on Dallas together. And he said, oh my God, that's right. I said, you and I were on the last 3 episodes of Dallas. And DiCaprio turns to Brad and said, you guys were on Dallas? He said, did you ever do a Matlock? And I said, I did a Matlock. Did you ever do a Falcon Crest? And all of a sudden, 2 of the biggest movie stars in the world, who also happen to be genetically blessed, we're all sitting around shooting the breeze, talking about how we made our bones doing guest spots on television shows in the 80s and 90s as we're coming up as young actors in the world. Dallas, Falcon Crest, Hunter, Matlock. And so I'm talking to these 2 cats. I mean, famously, Brad did a lot of failed television pilots before he got Thelma and Louise, which was his big break. But Brad had done a bunch of stuff that didn't really get a lot of attention. He was the hot new kid on the block at 18 or 19 when he first came to Hollywood. But it took him several years before he got his big break. DiCaprio was a child actor on Growing Pains, and he did a lot of guest spots. So instantly put me at ease because I thought, I'm sitting here talking to the 2 biggest movie stars in the world, and we all put our pants on one leg at a time. Brad and Leo are getting paid $20 million and I'm getting SAG scale. But we're all here to serve the same purpose. We're all here to collaborate in this scene together. So that's what I mean about the collaboration. And they're good guys. They've paid their dues. They love the craft. They love what they do. And whenever that movie is on, it's a remote drop movie for me. I go, oh shit, I got to watch this one again. I love this movie because it celebrates actors and it's just got such a love and a joy for this town that I have a particular fondness for. I mean, not just because I grew up in it, but because there are a lot of cautionary tales in this business. And I know a lot of actors that didn't make it and that took wrong turns and got into drugs and this and the other and had a tough time. You look at dudes like this, like Brad and Leo, who are consistently at the top of their game, consistently making bold choices and taking big swings and taking risks with the stuff that they do. And you go, wow, how great to be a part of that. How great to be a part of watching a couple of masters at work. So
what I'm inferring from that is that for you, the way that you are able to dial back the brain's natural tendency towards FOMO and social comparison is by leaning in to gratitude for being a part of this. Amazing.
Yes. A much more concise answer. Yes.
Oh, that's so great.
Than my long-winded answer. But
hardly.
Yes, it's burdens that are placed on young people, particularly now with social media. I enjoy my Instagram as much as the next person, but you've got actors, you got people that are getting television deals based on the amount of followers that they have on Instagram. It's an unrealistic world out there, and it's dangerous to a large extent. That's a whole other conversation. But yes, the answer to your question is I lean into the aspect of we're all in this together and we're trying to create something together.
That's beautiful. And I wonder how you attend to yourself when you are either amped from working late at night and you need to go to sleep because you've got a demanding day the next day, and you're still amped from what you've done because it was so high demand and so stimulating, maybe very exciting. Or on the opposite side, you are going through a cold streak. Oh my gosh, I was hot last year and I'm not so hot this year. How do I get through this time? How do you attend to your psyche so that you can sleep and that you can do all the other things that are so supportive in you bringing out your best?
I've never been a sound sleeper, unfortunately. I've never been a good sleeper. I'm always wrestling with, I'm always trying to find new ways to meditate, to calm
the mind.
I mean, I do a lot of hiking. I do a lot of walking. I exercise as much as I can. I'm lucky enough that I live near the beach. So I find that calms me down. On this particular show that I'm working on right now, we work until 1:30, 2:30 in the morning. On winning time, 16, 17-hour days. The days are long. They're long, grinding days. And again, it sounds Pollyanna-ish, but I love being there so much that I love being on the set. I love everything about it. I love the craft service table. I love shooting the breeze with other actors. We sit around in a circle in a green room and we're talking to each other. I mean, you have to find ways to get through long days like this. And again, I'm not digging ditches. I'm not building buildings. I mean, you're sitting there making a television show or making a movie. So every day is a gift. but I try to find ways to relax myself. And I also travel a lot. That travel is something that very much calms me, soothes me. My significant other lives in Washington, D.C. So we've been together 10 years. I go back and forth to Washington every 3 weeks. So getting out of LA and being away from the business, 3,000 miles away in a town that has nothing to do with the business and being with my person, I find very kind of freeing and kind of releases me from I don't have to think about Hollywood. I don't have to think about that next audition for a couple of days. And then I come back into it. I take it in little doses.
Gorgeous. And I'm glad you brought in the interpersonal component of relationship as being a healing element to your high demand life.
You've got to have a good support network. Those guys that I told you about, the character actor guys, we're on a text thread that sometime this text thread needs to go into a national archive. It's a 4-year-long unbroken chain of texts of some of the funniest, dirtiest, silliest, craziest conversations that you could possibly imagine. We make each other laugh. We lift each other up. If somebody is sick, somebody's there with a bowl of matzo ball soup. Or, what can I do? You've got to have a really good support network. I feel very blessed to know those guys because I'm fans of all of those guys and I admire them all so much. But that's very important to me, is to have people to lean on and to lean into, and we look out for each other. It's a brutal business, Adam. I mean, it's not an easy business. And so it can be very disheartening and very demoralizing. There's a lot of rejection. There's a lot of no's that you hear in the span of a 40-year career. And so you have to take those no's. And as Carrie Fisher famously put it, she said, take your broken heart and turn it into art. There's a lot of no's and you have to find ways to, what does it, make a smile be your umbrella? Something like that. I don't know. Sounds corny.
It does. And yet you're speaking about the notion that we have in the psychological literature called perceived support. And having a bunch of guys who are your fellow character actors like Kevin Pollak, Jason Alexander, and the aforementioned amazing Lawrence Fishburne in your circle.
I'm going to say Michael McKean is somebody else.
I love him too.
Who
so good.
Is somebody who I admire so much, who's had you look at somebody like McKean, who is new to my relationship group, who's had a career starting with Laverne and Shirley, but going back into Second City and before that, who's had such a diverse career and has done such a wide variety of things over the years and all of the Christopher Guest movies. And as a musician, it was Spinal Tap, but as a musician and as an actor. And so somebody like that, what a well of information and resource. All of these guys. I mean, we're all in our 50s and early 60s now. So these are guys, there's a lot of wisdom amongst these other cats. And I just feel honored to be able to sit and break bread with them all, because I just sit and listen to Michael McKean tell stories about working with Harry Shearer in The Credibility Gap in the 1960s. And I know.
To my ears, that's just like, it's unbelievable. Spinal Tap, Lenny and Squiggy. I mean, just Michael McKean is such a genius.
But you look at that long arc of that career. He's 75 now. You look at that long arc and that survival through Hollywood and Broadway and all the things that he's done in the last 55 years in show business. It's remarkable. Alfred Molina is another one.
Such a good actor.
I met Alfred Molina. We did a production of The Lion in Winter together. We were cast in a radio play version of The Lion in Winter. And he's somebody that I'd always admired. And I ended up taking his Shakespeare course. He taught a 16-week Shakespeare intensive. He became a mentor of mine and then a friend. And he's a guy, Alfred Molina is a guy who's like the ultimate character actor, and also kind of a genuine movie star in a lot of regards.
He's married to Salma Hayek once in a movie as Diego Rivera.
In Frida. But also just one of the nicest, kindest human beings you could possibly imagine. So you want to surround yourself with people like that.
And I love that idea of we become the average of the 5 people with whom we spend the most time. And you've really been conscientious about selecting them. I've taken great interest in friendship in adulthood, which is often overlooked. And I even gave a TEDx talk on the topic. I care about it so much because it shows up in my office. I work with highly successful people who've moved a lot, and through the moving may have lost those friendships and really desperately need to improve that aspect of their life. So it's really very validating to hear you speak at this level about the value of friendship. Before I go into my final miracle question, is there anything I should have asked but haven't yet?
I could talk to you for hours. Honest to God, I feel like I'm oversharing and over talking because I love to babble about the business. But you're asking all the right questions. We keep coming back to the same theme. It's about connection, and it's about relationships, and it's about friendships. Whether it's walking onto a set of a show that you're the guest star on and you don't know anybody, and I'm coming there and you instantly have to become part of that family for a week or 10 days filming, or whether you're on a movie for 3 months, you become part of a family. We are part of a troupe. Actors are part of a troupe. They're part of a tribe. And I think that's what I like more than anything else. I grew up as an only child, bopping around back and forth between here and New York. And then, like I said before, Mom would do a play in Chicago and St. Louis. And I moved around a lot. And as an only kid, it could be lonely. And so I think maybe my gravitation towards the world of acting and this tribe of actors, because I was always around actors as a kid when Mom was at the Screen Actors Guild, and I would come home and there would, Ed Asner would be there, or Jack Lemmon or whatever. And I mean, I was always surrounded by creative people that made me laugh and that made me think and that lifted me up. And it wasn't like, oh, I've seen that person on TV or I've seen that person in the movie. Like, I got to know Jack Lemmon as a guy, as a person, not just somebody I admired, but as a family man, as a father who also happened to have a job as an actor. So I've been lucky enough in that regard that I've gotten to become friends with people I greatly admire who also happen to be really decent human beings. Decent and flawed and as fucked up as everybody else, but we all share this common thread of we love being in this business, and we love entertaining, and we love making each other laugh, and we love making art.
Oh, it's the best. And I just hear the gratitude just oozing out of you as you're describing that. My man, my final and miraculous question, and that is this. If you had the magical powers to confer upon all humanity one insight or skill that would dramatically improve the lives of individuals and perhaps even society at large, what would that skill or insight be? And how do you imagine it would impact those parties?
The first thing that comes to mind, Adam, is we are living in a time right now where there's a real deficit of empathy in the world, not just in America, it breaks my heart to watch what's going on right now, particularly in Nashville the other day. And there's too much to go into now, not just politically. There's a shortage of love. There's become a shortage of empathy, a shortage of understanding. We've gotten so divisive and so split that it is shocking to me to witness. And I don't know how we come back from that. I've been asked to speak at a college graduation in a couple of weeks. I just now started jotting down my thoughts about what I was going to talk to at these kids' graduation in Connecticut. And I keep running around in my head. And it's this idea of we've lost touch with the ability to be kind to one another in the smallest regard. We've lost the ability to just simple acts of kindness. I don't know how that went away. It's almost like, to a certain extent, again, not to get into politics, but it feels like the election in 2016, it feels like the last president gave a certain group of people permission to be unkind to one another. If you're following my thread here.
I follow the thread.
And it makes me very sad. And I choose to not live in that despair every day. So I guess that's why I try to be upbeat and positive, and I try to show up to work with a smile on my face. And I keep coming back to this idea through our conversation of how important it is to just be kind to each other. It's not that hard. And showing gratitude for the world we live in. It's not that hard, but to show simple acts of kindness and to be empathetic and show empathy and show kindness for your fellow human being. It's really quite simple to do. If I could spread the gospel of one thing, it would be that.
As I listen to you speak about empathy, I think about the fact that attitudes are contagious. We have these mirror neurons that cause us to really empathize and to feel another person's feeling. And we imitate other people. We imitate what's around us. And by showing up in this way that you intentionally show up, you are helping to create that reality. And I'm also thinking about the fact that baked into all 224 of these different roles, empathy has been a central part of what has allowed you to bring forth these characters, stepping into someone else's experience, bringing it out, even if it's a totally different point of view, you step into it empathically.
You have to empathize, even if it's somebody as morally repugnant as the Fox News host that I mentioned earlier, or a Joe McCarthy or whatever, people that just sort of embodied ugliness, that brought their ugliness to the world. And you have to empathize. You've got to find a way in. Otherwise, if you're just playing them and judging them while you're playing them, then it becomes one note and it's boring. So,
and dude, you're going to appreciate this so much. I got to have the pleasure of eating a dinner with Len Lesser, whose memory is a blessed memory. And he played the part of Uncle Leo in Seinfeld. And I was asking him, I was like to me, Uncle Leo was the most reprehensible of characters, and said, I loved Uncle Leo. Are you kidding? Yeah. And I imagine you fall in love with those characters yourself in some ways.
You kind of do.
Yeah. Like you see some point of view.
Yeah.
So good.
You kind of do fall in love with them to a certain extent because you have to bring your own humanity to them. I mean, the most fun characters to play, without a doubt, hands down, are the villains. I lean into all of those guys. And I played a lot of bad guys. Over my career. And they're, without a doubt, the most delicious characters to play. So,
well, dude, you are the opposite of a bad guy. I just wish we had more genetic material floating around the planet that was like you, Spencer. All right, brother.
My friend. Be well.
This is Dr. Adam Dorsey thanking you for listening to Super Psyched. If you know anyone who might like it or who might benefit from listening, share it. And if you like the episode, please hit subscribe.